Welcome to Ancient Military History, a channel dedicated to providing visual representation of how ancient militaries operated and waged war, going into detail about the real tactics they used to win battles, and showing you, the viewer, how this would have looked in ancient times. In this video, we will be describing the tactics used in the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains that took place in 451 AD, between the Romans, led by Flavius Aetius, and the Huns, led by Attila the Hun. This battle, long remembered for its ferocity, resulted in the first and only defeat for the proud barbaric commander. The origin of the Huns is unknown. Historians can only agree that they were a nomadic tribe that most likely originated in Asia. The most plausible theory that can be backed by historical and archaeological evidence is that the Huns were descendants of the nomadic Xiongnu peoples who terrorized China around 300 to 400 BC. The merciless horsemen who felled their opponents with whistling arrows were so hated and feared by the Chinese that they, along with the Mongols, are believed to be the driving cause for the building of the Great Wall. Fast forward to the 5th century AD, and the Huns continued to carry their fearsome reputation among the Europeans. They are described to have filled the whole earth with slaughter and panic, as they flitted here and there on their swift horses. They were so terrifying in their appearance, and cruel in their ways, that the Goths believed them to be the children of witches, and the Romans believed they were the devils arrived, straight from hell. While the Huns' most powerful weapon was fear, they were very much unhesitant to use sheer brute force and cruel tactics to subdue their opponents. As they looted and plundered villages all over Europe, they took no pity on neither religion, nor rank, nor age, nor wailing childhood, taking no prisoners except when they needed slaves. Up against a fast-growing menace and seemingly unstoppable invader, the fractured Roman Empire had to do something to stop their destructive foe and protect their culture from extinction. Many times, the Eastern Roman Empire had to negotiate peace at the cost of a hefty annual tribute to the Hunnic Empire. But even their pricey peace treaties didn't stop the ambitious Attila from attacking undefended cities. By 450 AD, the Hunnic leader continued his conquest deeper into Europe, and he waged war against the Western Roman Empire. The Roman general Flavius Aetius had been preparing for a full-scale invasion of the Huns for some years prior to the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains. Aetius had lived among the Huns as a hostage in his youth, spoke their language, and understood their culture. He even had a personal friendship with Attila. Unfortunately, amicable relations didn't stop the impending invasion of the ambitious Hunnic king. Aetius, with full knowledge of Attila's larger and fiercer army of Huns, understood that his Roman forces couldn't face the barbarians alone, so he had to ally himself with former adversaries, the Visigoths, Alans, and Germanics. In the summer of 451, as Attila marched his men into the fertile lands of Gaul, Aetius and his allies met the Huns at the city of Orleans, just in time to break their siege and disperse Attila's men. Attila withdrew to the north, and, to cover their retreat, he left behind 15,000 men who were all, unfortunately, slaughtered by the Roman army. Attila positioned his remaining men at the Catalaunian Plains, at the base of a slight hill. Though he reached the field first, he chose a lower position that would most likely draw the Roman forces down and make the most of his highly skilled archers and horsemen. The Huns typically entered battle in tactical formation, while the medley of their voices made a savage noise. Then, unexpectedly, they purposely divided suddenly in scattered bands and attacked, rushing around in disorder here and there and dealing terrific slaughter. At first they fought from a distance with arrows, then they closed in on their opponents and engaged hand-to-hand with swords without regard for their own lives. Or they would skillfully entangle their enemies in a lasso or net and drag them to a violent death. The Huns were a frightening people, the likes of which the Romans had never faced before. The Huns were so prodigiously ugly that they might be taken for two-legged animals, dressed in ragged bits of fur, and their deformed skulls, which their parents reportedly bound as children, gave them a sort of shapeless lump rather than a head. They were expert archers who used composite bows that could strike a man 300 yards away. Being lightly equipped, they readily and swiftly maneuvered around their enemies. The Huns were also characterized by their attachment to their horses. One historian states that they ate and slept on their horses and were hardly able to walk on the ground. They would even perform ordinary tasks, sitting side saddle, and would meet each other on horseback. Another historian compared them to the mythical centaurs, as you would think that the limbs of the man and horse were born together, for so firmly did the rider always stick to the horse. The Romans were thus at odds against the superiority of Hunnic horsemanship. As they arrived at the Catalaunian Plains, they assembled on the high ground. The Alans and Germanics were on their left, and the Visigoths held a ridge to the right. They faced the Huns below, who had also allied themselves with Ostrogoths, Gepids, and other Germanic tribes as well. Like many ancient battles, the number of men who marched into the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains is lost to embellished accounts and oral retellings of survivors, but each side commanded anywhere between 30,000 and 80,000 men, while some historians claimed that Attila commanded a force of up to 700,000 men. However, the most likely number, according to recent estimates, is 30,000 on each side, as the Hunnic king's siege campaigns from east to west drained him of his manpower and supplies. Attila waited until the 9th hour, or 2:30 p.m., to begin the battle, so that, should the day go against him, his army could retreat under the cover of darkness. The armies engaged. The battle grew fierce, confused, monstrous, and unrelenting. The Alans held the center against the Huns, while the Visigoths defeated Attila's Ostrogoths on his left flank, and Aetius drew out the Gepids on his right. The Visigoths then descended upon the Huns in the center. Amid the confusion, Attila saw that he was unable to make use of his cavalry or archers, with his left flank in ruins and his right engaged with Aetius. And so, he ordered a retreat back to camp. The Gepids joined the retreat, and the entire force slowly moved back, with the Roman forces still engaging them, until they reached their base camp after nightfall. Once secure in their camp, the Hun archers drove off the attackers, and the battle came to a close. It is said that once night fell, there was complete confusion among the Romans, and they stumbled about in the dark, not knowing who had won the day, or what they were supposed to do next. Even Aetius was so disoriented that he almost wandered into the Hun encampment. But when first light arrived the next day, both sides were able to view the carnage of the previous day's fighting, and neither side seemed eager to renew it. The Romans then realized they could hold the Huns in their position until they surrendered. While the Hun archers kept their opponents at bay, the Romans began a siege surrounding their camp. Attila surrounded his own caravan with enough flammables, sufficient to kill himself if needed, as suicide was preferable to enslavement. However, for unknown reasons, and still unexplained to this day, the siege was abandoned, and the Romans and Visigoths quietly withdrew. Attila and his forces awaited an attack that would never come, but at the realization that their opponents had left, they too inexplicably retreated home as well. Some historians theorize that both forces were too depleted of their manpower, that they had no choice but to return home or face a decisive defeat, while others believe that Aetius did not almost accidentally wander into the Huns' camp, and the previously amicable Aetius and Attila struck a bargain, as Rome's adversaries only formed an alliance in the face of the greater Hunnic threat. But if the threat had been decimated, then nothing would stop the Visigoths from attacking the weaker Romans. And so, Aetius possibly allowed the Huns to retreat, with keeping Rome's best interests in mind. Historians can't even agree if the battle is considered a victory, loss, or draw. But traditionally, it is viewed as a Roman victory, as it was Attila who was the first to withdraw from the field, and there is every indication that the Roman forces would have continued the battle if night had not fallen. Furthermore, the Romans halted the Hunnic expansion into Europe and thus preserved its cultures from extinction. Thank you for watching Ancient Military History, your go-to resource for the strategies and tactics used by ancient militaries throughout history to conquer their foes. We are a brand new channel, and your support would mean the world to us, So, if you liked this video and would like to see more, please subscribe and leave in the comments which ancient military battle you'd like to see next. Until next time, thank you and have a wonderful day.